To ask someone, how are you in Japanese, you're going to ask, O genki desu ka? O genki desu ka? So remember that the hiragana su is only pronounced as an S when it's at the end of a word, such as in the word des. Even though it's written in Romanji as an SU, we are not going to say desu. We're going to ignore the U and just say des. O genki desu ka? Also note that in the hiragana there are no spaces. Even though this sentence is 3 words, o genki, desu, and ka, the Japanese don't use spaces in their sentences. You're just going to write every single hiragana one after another like it's one great big huge long word. Note that there is no question mark either. Even though it's a question, it still ends in a period. The Japanese actually don't have a question mark. What they've done instead is that the hiragana ka is put on the end of every single question, and the only reason it's there is to show that it's a question. It's kind of like a verbal question mark. So we both hear it, o genki desu ka? You do actually say the question mark, quote unquote, and we also write it. The ka is at the end of the sentence. However, you're still going to write it with a period. To answer o genki desu ka, you're simply going to say genki desu. It's the exact same thing, only we've dropped both our first and our last hiragana. From o genki desu ka to genki desu. The reasons for that are pretty simple. The first O is only used when you're talking about or to other people. It's what's known as an honorific. It's a certain extra sound that you add onto a word in order to show extra respect to another person. You can't use these when you're talking about yourself, so therefore, how are you? We're going to use the O. I'm good. We have to get rid of it. O genki becomes genki. Finally, this is no longer a question. It's now an answer to the question, I'm good, period. So we drop our ka because it's no longer a question. So we go from desu ka to just des. O genki desu ka? Genki desu. Our last section is about introductions. So to ask someone, what is your name? You're going to say, Oname wa nan desu ka? Oname wa nan desu ka? Note that you have the exact same, it's called a particle, where you say wa, but it's written as ha. We saw this already in konnichiwa and konbanwa. Both of them are said with a wa at the end, but they're both written with ha. Exact same thing in this question. Oname wa nan desu ka? But it's written oname ha nan desu ka? Completely honestly, this question really isn't used much. It's a known fact, more or less, in Japanese culture, where when you first meet someone, they don't know your name, so therefore you should tell them your name. Most of them will just introduce themselves, say, oh, hi, how are you? I'm blank. And they just immediately tell you their name without you having to ask. However, it's still a useful question to know just in case. In order to introduce yourself, therefore, you're just going to say your name, des. Okay, and of course, don't forget to fill in your name. Okay, this is just the is, or like the am if you're saying like I am. And so you can't just walk up to someone and be like, I'm. You have to actually tell them what your name is. Okay? It does come first in Japanese. So, for example, if your name was Greg, you would say Greg des. If your name was Rob, you'd say Rob des. If you would like, you can insert vowels as necessary to make your name fit that consonant vowel pattern, but you totally don't have to. So, for example, my first name is Brittany. Sometimes I say Brittany des, sometimes I say Biritani des. It doesn't actually matter which one you use. In longer conversations, sometimes it's easier to try and fit into a Japanese pattern just so that you're not breaking up your conversation. It can feel and sound really weird to have this long conversation in a foreign language and then all of a sudden you have like one word that doesn't fit that pattern. But you don't have to, especially since, quite frankly, you're not giving 20-minute long speeches in Japanese at this point. If you just want to say your name normally and then stick the word des on the end, that's totally fine.